So today I'm going to use the RCD project tracker as an example for this functionality. They have a lot of data in here, and they have a lot of cool images, and I think they make for pretty neat reports. So it's something to kind of show off to everybody. Like I said, the enabling it is something that Sitka has to do. You don't see any new menu options here. You shouldn't yet, or you might because I'm an admin and I get some extra stuff. But I'm just going to go ahead and enable the report functionality on this website here real quick. So you can see once I enabled it, I added this new reports item to the menu. And if you click on that, there's a couple options. The ones that I previously mentioned, there's projects and then manage report templates. So why don't we go ahead and look into the manage report templates here. Right now, there's no report templates in the system because we just enabled it for them. And there's a couple of things to kind of mention here. Obviously, you can create your report template here, but the documentation is at the bottom of this page. And I think people will find these pretty useful in terms of getting started. We tried to do our best to kind of give some documentation on how to use it and what kind of data you can access. So I can just take a peek into the user guide here real quick. This goes over kind of how to enable it and how to add new templates. And then it kind of introduces the templating language here. Because we're using C#, there might be some things that people need to know about how to format their statements and expressions and stuff like that. It goes over some kind of brief report examples. Like this is an example of what you could, of kind of an input that you can give to Microsoft Word, and then beneath it, it will give you an example of what the output might be like after you run it through the engine here. There's also some more details in here about some C# stuff, and it's actually pretty neat. You can do a lot with C# in here, and so much that we can't document all of it. But if you're really curious and adept at it, you might want to look more into C# itself, into the basics of it. I don't want people to get overwhelmed because there's a lot, but there might be some syntax stuff that can be important or helpful for you to kind of go forward. Again, there's some more examples of kind of conditional content, some loops and some if statements, things like that in this user guide. The second piece is the model documentation. I'm going to go ahead and download this and open it. This is where you can kind of think of this as a cheat sheet for what you can put into your Word documents. At the bottom, there's tabs for each of these models that we can deal with in Word. And models are just kind of a way that we have set this up specifically for you to access certain properties. So within ProjectFirma itself, it has a project model, but we kind of make these shorter models here that they're simpler and that you can access specific information. Not everything is in all of these models that you might expect in ProjectFirma, but we didn't want to speculate as to kind of what everybody wanted. We wanted to get people started and give them enough to kind of play with it, and then kind of come back to us with any questions that they have or any suggestions, kind of how they want to go forward. And if there's something that, if you're making a report in the future and you really would like this very specific information on your project, please feel free to reach out to us. And then we can kind of work with you to get that in these models, and then we'll update the documentation here so you can kind of go back to your cheat sheet and get working again effectively. So I'm just going to minimize this. We'll be back here in a little bit to kind of take a peek at it some more. And then you're also provided with an example report. This example report is a functional template that can help you get started. I recommend starting from here, and that's what I'm going to do today. It's kind of like a good template that kind of shows you the basics and gets you looping through all of your projects within your Word documents. So let's go ahead and download this example report. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to move it somewhere where where I can find it later. Let's just put it right here. Delete this old one. So instead of just making our own template at first, I want to create a new report template, and let's use this example report to kind of get started and kind of show on the left side of the screen, we'll show kind of the code, and then on the right side, we'll kind of show the output here. So to make a new report, click the create a new report template button up here, and then you provided a report title. I'm just going to call it example report. I'm going to give it a description, report for demonstration. The report model field, there's only one option for now, but we wanted to leave it open to new models in the future if we wanted to report on other aspects of your ProjectFirma instance here. So this will be selected by default, and you can't select anything else, and that's normal, and that's to be expected for now. Finally, you upload the example report or the Word document that you've put your code into, and then you can go ahead and click Save. And actually what it does is it's validating the Word document template that you upload. It runs a couple tests on it and makes sure it compiles, and it tries to insert some project information. Working with Word, as you probably know, by trying to align images and having text wrap around things, and things get kind of messy sometimes, we wanted to make sure that you can only upload valid reports. It would be a shame if you uploaded one that is broken and then you kind of couldn't go back to the other copy, and we just didn't want you to kind of lose time for that. So we added our example report. And Damon, please let me know if I'm going too fast or anything. I'm just gonna kind of keep on going here. We added our example report, and it shows up in this grid. You could edit it here, change the title and description, and then you can replace the document with a new updated one if you wanted to. And then if you wanted to download that template that you uploaded, you can click on this link over here for the template file. So if you have a report already in the system and it's working, but you want to make changes to it, a good way to do that is to download that Word document, edit it, and then come back here and replace that with a new file here in this edit report template modal screen. So now that we've started with our example report, we can go back up to the reports menu. And like I mentioned earlier, there's this page called projects. And this is where we're going to select all of the projects that we want to include in this report. You might recognize the grid. I know we have these pretty much all over the place in ProjectFirma, but that's for good reason. It allows you to filter your projects by various things. So if I wanted to select project stage of completed, I can do that. If I wanted to include into my report only ones that have a planning/design start year of 2018, I can certainly do that. And then you can also order the table here by any of the columns that you see. So why don't we just kind of go with these options? We filtered it down to what we want to include in this report. And then you can select either individual projects here, or you can use the global checkbox here to select or deselect all the ones that you've selected. So I'm going to select all of them here. And then finally, you need to click Generate Reports. And this is where you're going to generate your output Word documentation or your Word document. So there will be a drop down here where you can select between your templates. It's helpful to kind of have a title and description so you know which one you're selecting. It'll give you a quick list of the projects that you've selected that are going to be included in the report. And then from there, you just need to click Generate. And it's going to download a new Word document to your browser, and you can save it on your computer. You can open it. So let's go ahead and open that. It's off to the side, but I can make that full screen here. So yeah, this is kind of the output from those 5 or 6 projects that I selected there from the template. We scroll down, we can see that we can include images, and it's going to kind of loop through each of the projects that we selected and provide the same information for each of those. So I think a good next step would be to kind of compare the input and the output for this side by side. So let me open up the template here. And if any of this is confusing, Damon, if you think this is confusing, let me know. I can slow down and kind of get some questions resolved there. So on the left side of the screen, we have the Word template with code in it, with the C# code in it. And on the right side, we have what ProjectFirma spit out to us after it injected all the project information. So at the very top, you can kind of see that this is, I'll enable editing here, get that back over onto the left. You can actually insert stuff into the headers and footers of your Word documents. And then at the top of kind of every report, what we're doing is we're setting a variable here called projects, and you can name this whatever you want. We just think, you know, it's a variable name. It doesn't matter what it is, but that name is going to be referencing the model report model in the future. And the model report model is where all of those projects are stored. That's where the word templating engine is going to have all of the 5 or 6 projects here. And we're just going to name that variable projects because that makes sense for us. If you're a tenant like Puget Sound Partnership, you might call it near-term actions, but the name of the variable doesn't matter. It's just what you're going to be referencing it as in the future throughout this Word document. And you might notice that this does not show up in the output. It's because everything within the code does not show up in the output, except if you're trying to actually output the code onto the screen. So below that, we have this line here, example report, and we're saying that we want to output it, the model report title. There's a couple other properties on the model here. One of them is report title. So if you remember back in ProjectFirma, I named this report. So I gave this report a title of example report. So we can access that within the Word document, and that's what's showing right here. To kind of print things out onto the page, you use this equal sign at the beginning of these code statements. And I'm sure people are confused, right, already. And that's fine, but there is the additional documentation that I showed you kind of goes into more detail of kind of outputting and why we use this equal sign here and kind of the syntax of the language. You might also notice that the formatting on this line here on the left, example report, is the same formatting that's output on the right. That's definitely a key feature of this because we want you to be able to, you know, write out your project title and style it with Word, how you want it to appear in your final report. So you'll see that similarly here. This is a font size 24. And if we enabled editing here on the right one, you'll see that it's the same thing.
Hey, Stewart.
Yep.
Yeah, we do have a question actually. Wes wants to know if once this is activated for a given instance of ProjectFirma, will all types of users see the reports menu option, or is it just select group?
Good question. Right now, it's only limited to admins. So we want to kind of let you play with it and kind of decide with us how we would like to move forward with this. There are a lot of options, and that is certainly an option to kind of extend this to allow other people to maybe generate the reports themselves, but not be able to add them. But for now, we want to leave it to admins so people can kind of get in there and plan how their organization would like to use this going forward. So again,
could it be, by instance, like let's say if RCD wanted it to be admins and particular project managers, perhaps, but you know another instance didn't want to do it, like Idaho wanted to do it just with admins. Is that a possibility, or is it all across?
Right now, it's all across, but that's also a good question. Kind of with how we work on ProjectFirma, we can add custom functionality to allow that. It just depends on the user's needs. So if RCD tracker does want, say, project stewards to be able to access it, we can work on a solution that allows that. But for now, we wanted to get this out there and get people asking great questions like that to kind of help us design the future of this as we go forward.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. So we're printing out the report title here, and then after that, let me just look at my notes. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Sorry. So yeah, after that, you'll see a for each loop. These are common in programming languages and programming in general. A lot of the times you have lists of things. Like right now, we have a list of projects. And we kind of want to loop through each of those projects. So the way we do that is we do a for each loop here. We're saying for each variable project in projects, and the name of this variable, again, doesn't matter, but it's good as a programmer or a coder to be clear about what you're doing. So we're saying for each project in projects, and then we're opening our loop here with this curly bracket right here. And if I scrolled all the way down to the bottom of this template, we'll see the closing loop. So everything within there is going to be repeated for each project that you selected in the interface in ProjectFirma. So that's kind of how we're going to be able to design reports that loop through projects and that include a lot of information for a lot of projects within the system. So now once we're inside this for each loop, we have access to that project model that I mentioned. We named it project, the variable here, but if we went into our documentation here, and maybe I can make this a little bit bigger so people can see it better. The cheat sheet, if we're on the project tab, we can see a lot of actually all of the details that we can get from a project and output it to a screen. So what we're doing in this template is we're looping through the projects. And the first thing we're going to do is output the project name with font size 24. And I think this is if I open styles, I think this is a heading 2 here. So that translates across to the final Word document. And then the next thing we're going to look at here, the next thing, going downwards in this Word document is it looks like we're trying to grab the key photo from the projects. So we're setting another variable to key photo. The name here doesn't matter, but we're going to be clear that we're trying to get a key photo. And then in your documentation, back in the model documentation, we can see that there is something here to get the project key photo. So I'm doing kind of the same thing here. I'm setting a variable with a name equal to the project's get key photo function here. And what it does is it returns, if you scroll over to the right, it returns a single project image model. And then if you wanted more information on what that project image has inside of it, you can go here and see that information. So we're getting the project key photo here. And then what we want to do is make sure we're only printing the photo if it exists. Word isn't going to help you very much in kind of checking if things exist like this. But the examples in all the documentation kind of try to reiterate that checking if something exists is generally a good idea if you're trying to do something more complicated with it. So if the key photo exists, this key photo variable would have information on the key photo. If it doesn't, it's going to be null. And null basically means empty or not set. So we're checking right here if the key photo is not null. And if the key photo is not null, like the loop, we have this kind of curly bracket to indicate everything we want to do if the key photo is not null. And what we want to do is output that image into the Word document. It might be a little bit confusing to see key photo dot image, but that's because there's more properties on the key photo, and we're saying we want to print the image onto the screen. So after that, we're doing some more simple stuff. We're gonna output the description of the project onto the screen. Very simply, we can add the project description like that. I added this line here just to kind of drill it into our heads that, you know, we can design these Word documents with all sorts of features and images and stuff beforehand that get output into the document. Um, kind of the same way we're trying to access the key photo up here, we're going to try to access the contacts now on a project. So we're setting a variable contacts, and then from the project objects, from the project model we still have here, that while we're inside of this loop, we're trying to get the project contacts. And if we go in back into the documentation here, there should be something right here in your cheat sheet that says, gives you an example of how to get your project contacts. So when you call this, it returns a list of project contact models. So this project contacts is going to be a list of these models right here, which you can then use to output full names, first names, last name, email, phone, contact type, etc. Oops, so let's go back here. So then another kind of key functionality is that Word documents, tables are pretty important, and we wanted to make sure that we can populate tables appropriately with information. So we're going to do another for each loop here, but this one's a little bit different because if you can imagine that if we're looping through the contacts and everything within this loop here would get repeated for every contact, that would happen, except we put this exclamation mark here. I know it's a little bit confusing, and the documentation goes a little bit more into that, but that's just a way for us to say, within here, we want to loop through the contacts, but we don't want to make a full table for every contact that we come into. And we don't want to repeat the small paragraph or sentence here for every contact. So then we would create our table. We can output our information here. If you had contacts, you can access their contact type, their name, last name, full name, and email, phone, and maybe some other things here. And lastly, kind of the most important thing with dealing with tables is that on the last column here, you need to call this append row function. Let's try to expand that just so you can read it a little bit more clearly. What this is doing is telling the engine to that this is the stopping point for one contact. And appending row means that, okay, next time we're going to loop through this list of contacts, instead of looping through everything here, we're going to add a new row to this table. So in the output over here, I don't believe that there are many contacts on the RCD tracker project, so that's why we're not seeing any here. But in the next example, or in the next section here, while we're dealing with organizations, this is pretty much exactly the same as we're dealing with the contacts here, but we're going to go through all of the organizations. And you can see that RCD tracker does have organizations, and it is spitting out data based off of the organization relationship type, their name, and their short name. So yeah, like contacts, we have a new section here for organizations. And over here on the right, we can see that this project, Carbon Farm Plan 3, has 4 organizations, and these are the information that belongs to that organization. So next, if we're going down, this is ending that loop through the organizations here. And then we're just going to print out a bunch of other project details that are accessible through the models there. So if I scroll right here on the right Word document, you'll see that we're outputting a bunch of data from the project model in ProjectFirma into this Word document. This is most of the things that you can do for now. I don't know if it's all of them, but that's kind of what we're looking for, is to talk to everybody here and see what kind of information that they would want. I know people have different needs in terms of financial information, and we want to make sure that we do it justice without kind of guessing what you're going to want beforehand. So if you have any ideas whatsoever about what kind of stuff you would want to be able to output in your Word document, again, please let us know. It would help us a lot, and it would in turn help everybody else within the ProjectFirma ecosystem. One last thing to note about this table here is that we are attempting to set the cell color of this table, this one right here, this cell. So first we're printing out the name of the color, or the hex value, I believe it is, and then we're saying, it's kind of another special thing about this word templating engine is that it comes, we can add these kind of helper functions here, and this one is for setting a cell color in a table. And we're setting a cell color to the project's current project status color. I know a lot of tenants don't use this yet, but the way it works, you could technically add in any hex value for color into this function. So you don't just need to use the current project status color here. Because this is C#, we can do some interesting things. We can set a variable color equals to, actually, let's do a conditional statement first. So if, while we're still within this loop, I can access the project, I can access the project stage. So I'm saying if the project stage equals to completed, then I can open up my if statement here, and I can just close it real quick so we don't forget about that later. And then within here, I could set a variable color to, let's get some quotes, and I could set that to any kind of hex value, hex color values, hex color picker maybe. So say I like this color right here, I can grab this hex value, I can go back into my Word template, and I can set that inside of here. And then we could use that if I put this above this table here. I'm really sorry if this is confusing, but I could put this above the table here. I can set the color. If the project is completed to something, I can set the color to something else if it's in the implementation phase, and then I can use that color to set the cell color of, say, this one right here. So then I could just type color. So it knows that this variable color, it knows about this variable color because that happened before it in the Word document. So it's useful to think about things linearly. If you add a variable after and then reference it before, you might run into some errors saying that it doesn't know what you're talking about. But this could be a way to kind of differentiate colors within tables based off of different stuff. And you don't just have to use project stage, you can do all sorts of stuff here. And that's kind of where the beauty of this comes in, is that you can get pretty creative. And if you're, if you're interested and you have enough motivation, it's something that you can kind of look into, and you'd be kind of building some programming skills, which is always helpful in this day and age. So yeah, that kind of went through, sorry, I'll pull up this one over here again. That kind of went through everything, and we're at the end of the loop here. So in our final Word document, if I kept scrolling, we'll see that the next project here starts. It goes back up to the top of this loop. And now we're at the top of this loop right here. And now we're printing the next project's name. And this one actually does have a key photo, which is pretty nice. Kind of shows that this image call here does work. There are additional options on this image function call. They are mostly, I believe they're fully documented in the model documentation here, but you can provide it a width. So if you don't want your image to be 100% width of the page, you can set a number for maybe 50% or whatever you want there. You can also access some other image properties such as the timing, caption, or credit. So then, yeah, if we keep scrolling down, we'll keep seeing projects being listed with all the project information, some nice photos that RCD Tracker has uploaded to ProjectFirma. And then, you know, this one's only an 11-page report, but you can imagine how these reports can get very large if you're using, you know, if you're accessing, you know, dozens or hundreds of projects that you have in the system. So if you were to do this by hand for each project, that might take you a very long time. But if you set up a template first, you can generate these reports pretty efficiently and get a lot of information in them. So that's kind of the example report that we provide you. It's a good place to start. And if you're making your own report, I highly recommend starting from here, testing it, removing stuff, and trying to add new stuff if you want it. So are there any questions, Damon, or should I go into kind of making a new report here?
I am not seeing any questions from the audience. So if you do have a question, please use the chat or the Q&A. Oh, here's one. One just popped in. Let me take a look. How would we get our, Dorothy wants to know, how could we get our logo on the report?
Great question. So I think I'll be able to answer that if I go into the next phase of this kind of training here. I'll just jump into it now because I think we are actually running out of time. I don't know how it's already 1:42. But let's go ahead and make a new report, and I'll hopefully be able to answer that question for you, Dorothy. So I'm going to just close that. I'm not going to save it for now. Let's go download a new, just a fresh example report like you might if you're going to make a new Word template yourself. So I'm going to enable editing here. And so kind of how it allows for that branding and to answer Dorothy's question a little bit, say you wanted to add a cover page. I think that's under insert pages. So let's add a cover page here onto the front of it. Let's just pick one of these right here. And you can include this in your template. So I think I have one of these on my desktop. I've got this logo here. I'm just going to go back, grab that, and get rid of that. And I'm going to paste in Sitka's logo here into this Word document. So you can do that. We could insert the report title here, but I'm just going to put an example report for now. Let's give it a subtitle. Off the report templating. Date, company name, address. Actually, this might be a good idea to show that because it is C#, you have access to a lot of stuff that C# provides you. So if I wanted, I could output this date here. And let's try to keep the formatting, merge formatting. So I can actually output, this is like a C# code right here. I'm outputting the date time of now. Hopefully that'll work. I don't think we're going to run into any issues of that. But I think that might answer your question, Dorothy, is that a lot of the times you might want to put your branding in beforehand. And just treat it like you're creating a Word document. You're on your cover page. You can edit it however you like, make it pretty, make it perfect. And then you can get into kind of the nitty gritty stuff after the fact. So we added kind of the Sitka technology group stuff there. And for this example report, say that like NOAA or some organization wants a report on all of your projects that are in the completed phase, and they want to see before and after photos and a description of each of those projects. So what I can do is I'm starting again with this example report. And I'm just going to kind of rip out a lot of stuff here that I don't want. I don't need this anymore. I do want to loop through all the projects. The key photo at the top would be nice, but we don't really care about contacts or organizations right now. So let's get rid of those. Similarly with all these other project details right here. Oh, there's a meeting coming up in 15 minutes. So then I'm just going to try to get rid of this border. Cool. And then what we want to do is we want to access the before photos and the after photos in this. So kind of like the examples above it, we want to go ahead and set a variable here. So let's call it before photos equals project. And if I wanted to go look at the cheat sheet here, I could find this in the project tab down here. So you can actually get photos by the timing in ProjectFirma. I'm going to enable editing. I'm just going to copy this text right here, and let's paste that into here. Let's get rid of that for now. Paste that straight from the cheat sheet. So I'm saying before images equals the project, which is the loop that we're in. Actually, I think we're outside of the loop right now. I need to make sure to get that within the loop. And we're saying get project images by timing of before. And then what I might want to do is I want to check if there are any before images. So I'm going to do if before images.any. And this is just making sure that this is only going to print out to the screen if there are project images. So if there are any of them, we can go ahead and insert, let's go styles. Let's do a heading 3 of before photos. And then after that, I want to just, then I want to loop through all of them. So for each var photo in, I'll call it image just to make it more clear. For each variable image in before images, and let's do that loop there too. And then we want to print out, I'm just going to copy this here real quick. So what programmers do, they copy a lot of codes. But this time we want to, it's not called key photo this time, it's just called image. And then if I wanted to output the image caption, I can do image dot, and let's go look at the documentation here. Dot image caption. So go back, dot image caption. And that will print out the caption. And so we want to do after photos. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to copy the before stuff, paste it here, but this time I'm just going to rename it to after images, and then we're going to change this function call to after. And then we're saying if there are any after images, we want to print out this stuff. So let's change this to after photos. For each variable image in after images, we want to print out the image here, and we also want to print out the caption. So unless I made any mistakes, I believe this will work. Let's give that a try. I'm going to save this. I have a folder on my desktop that we can use. Let's do demonstration or live demonstration. Reports. And then I should be able to go back to ProjectFirma, back into my report center, create a new report template, and let's, what did we call it? We called it live demonstration. Template, can't change anything here. Let's keep it like that. And let's try to upload that, see if it works. Hopefully don't get any errors. Okay, great. And then let's run that reports on all projects that are in the completed stage. I'm going to filter it down to completed. I'm going to select all of them, click generate reports, and we're going to, now that we have two, we're going to choose which report template that we want to use. I'm going to use the live demonstration one. There's a list of all the projects, and we're going to click generate. Because we're accessing a lot of images, this one might take longer than the other ones. It still is, you know, impressively fast, in my opinion, that it's able to insert that much information. There we go. We've got it downloaded back. And we can open this outputted Word document, and we'll see that the Sitka logo is still there. That is in the cover letter that we added before. It prints out the date and the time that we printed it. And then it goes through each of the projects, and the completed phase displays their title, the key photo, the description, and then before photos with a caption for each of them. And if this one had after photos, it would also display the after photos. So it's just going to loop through this, and let's see how many pages this made. So this made a 206-page report in just a couple minutes there. And something that I think is pretty neat, I'm going to enable editing on this. Like I was mentioning, that we're trying to get you like 80 or 90% of the way there. Something that I like to do, and on a long report like this, you might want to insert a table of contents. And I can just go ahead and add a table of contents to this. And because we used all of the headings when we were making our template, we have this pretty well formatted table of contents here right off the bat. I noticed that the cover letter got pushed after that, but that's not a huge deal. I think it just inserted the table of contents where I was at currently. So we could do that again if we wanted, but so we get you to this far within your report. You can go ahead and go through. Say you don't like this photo, of course you can feel free to delete it. You're not going to mess up the template by deleting anything in here. You could always go back and run it again. So you might go through your report, curate it. You might add additional notes that you can come up with. Just kind of make sure that the project or the report is doing kind of exactly what you want there. And then once you're done, you might save it as a PDF file. Let's go back to my desktop and let's save this as a PDF. It's a rather large file. I mean, there's 200 plus pages with a lot of images. So I find that relatively impressive that it does work and it doesn't break when we're doing that. But it's thinking pretty hard with making this PDF report. So yeah, you've got your table of contents here that we just added real quickly afterwards, and you can go ahead and click on these and go down to their appropriate sections. So you can kind of quickly scroll through here and you'd be like, oh, Bodega Goat Ranch Rainwater Catchment Project, what are some of the before photos look like? And you can go directly to that. So I think I'm running out of time. So I guess I'll try to wrap this up. That's kind of a live demonstration of making a report kind of live in front of everybody here. I hope that was useful, and I hope that nobody's too scared of starting to work with these things. I'm pretty excited about it. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm really excited about it, actually. And I hope that everyone here or watching the video can kind of imagine some of the possibilities that you can make with this. I think we're going to find that similarly to Marathi Share, you guys are going to impress us with kind of what you end up doing with this and kind of with the questions that you have and everything like that. So I can go on and on and on, but it's probably a good time to get to some Q&A stuff. Again, one last time, please feel free to reach out to me regarding any kind of questions you have here. I'd be happy to help. And if I can't help, I'd be happy to forward your question to anybody else that can.